barbecue is something. It's like it's a work food of love. You got to put the time and the patience in there to get it to turn out right. But you don't want to try to rush it.
Welcome to the Pitmasters podcast. I'm Rusty Monson.
I'm Anthony Lujan.
Today we have a special guest, Malcom Reed of How to Barbecue Right. And we'll be asking him all the questions you guys have been begging to hear. So stay tuned with us and we'll be right back at you.
What's up, Malcom?
What's up, guys? How are y'all?
Good.
We're doing good.
Well, I want to first off and say thanks, because this podcast is in part to you. We were talking about doing a podcast and we listened to your episode on, how to do this kind of thing. And Rochelle's advice was just do it. So we're like, dude, she's right. Let's just do it. Let's just get doing this. So, it's an honor to talk to you today because, first of all, I'm a huge fan. I'm the guy that buys your spices in 5-pound bags. I've watched everything here you've done. I've listened to every episode you've recorded. So thanks for being on our podcast. We appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into barbecuing. Where did it all start?
Well, I grew up in a town called South Haven, and right outside of Memphis, in the little northwestern tip of Mississippi, and we had all the little towns around had like barbecue festivals. They weren't always sanctioned, but it just so happens that Memphis in May is the huge world championships that's just up the road from us. In our town, a lot of guys use that contest as kind of a practice round for the big world championship. And so I grew up going to it. Me and my brother got into barbecue, and we had some other buddies that had killer hogs, and we're kind of the ones that stuck with it over the years. And now it's a full-time gig for me.
Nice. When I was talking to you here at Traeger HQ, man, you were so jacked and pumped on Memphis in May. That's like your favorite event, right?
It is. And, for us, that's the world championship of pork. And in Memphis in May, it's all about, the whole hog, the ribs, the whole shoulders. It's a unique style contest. Plus, we have the on-site judging factor of it. Your typical barbecue contest, you cook your categories, you turn them in a blind box, and that's all you do. Well, at Memphis in May, you actually have rounds of judges that come by and visit you. And you have to show them your grill, show them all your procedures for how you cook the food, and then you get to tell them this wonderful story about why it's so great. And that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, and you cook pork shoulder in that mostly, right?
We've done it all. This past year, we actually did ribs, and we did okay. I think we were 24th out. I mean, there's hundreds of teams there, so we weren't in the top 10, but we were pretty happy with our results, I guess.
Nice.
Always do better.
Always.
So let's jump into just kind of the Q&A part of it. So I am a new cook. I'm just barely starting out. What kind of what do you suggest I do? If I haven't even bought a pit yet, what's my first pit I'm buying?
Well, it all comes down to your budget and the kind of style of barbecue. I mean, I recommend, guys, if you don't have a grill, you probably need a Weber kettle. Learn the basics, and that's one of the ones that you can get in very inexpensive, and you can do a little bit of everything on it. It's versatile. If you want to step it up and just get more specific and get a smoker, I usually steer guys to the UDS style pits because they have a real authentic barbecue flavor. Now, if you want to spend a little more money and you want a little bit more electronic control, set it and forget it type, I steer them towards the pellet grills. So really, it's up to you, and most importantly, your budget.
What's your favorite to cook on?
Well, right now I'm gonna have to say my Jambo, Miss Jolene. She's bad. She's a bad girl.
I'm so jealous about that. When I heard you guys are getting one, I'm like, oh, if I could have one pit, that'd be it.
It's almost like you're waiting for a child to be born. Didn't you say you waited like 9 months for that?
Oh yeah, it was. It was 9 months, and I think he's up to like 14 months lead time now. It's something crazy. Jamie's business is booming. I think he's trying to get out of it.
Yeah,
when I got mine,
heard that.
He told me he had like one more year and that was it. But I mean, his business has picked up so much. I don't know if he's still thinking about retiring or what.
Maybe it's a marketing strategy.
Yeah, supply and demand.
That's why I bought mine, because I didn't. I bought it because they hold their value. They're the one pit that's worth more the day you get them. that, that most things depreciate, but these pits actually go up in value.
I like that. That's a good, something I can tell my wife. Like, listen, it's it's an investment, what's more making money.
That's right. Barbecue pits and guns, that's a safe bet.
Definitely.
Okay. So let's say I bought a drum barrel. So we actually have a company here in Utah called Salt City Drum Smokers that just come out with a cool drum. So I bought one of those, and what do I do? Like, what's a good thing to practice on? Where am I starting?
Well, first thing, you probably want to season it a little bit. And what I do, I recommend just building a fire in it, opening the vents all the way where you're getting maximum airflow, and you just want to get it good and hot. Usually those drums, when you open them up like that, they want to run upwards of 375, 400 degrees. And I usually spray like a light coat of vegetable oil or some kind of, food grade spray or something like in there. And just to get a good flavor going in the drum, burn a little wood on that fire. You don't have to start with any meat. And usually when you start out wanting to put meat on it after you burn it for several hours, just to get all the new off of it, I suggest starting with something easy like chicken or even around here where we are in Mississippi, we do a lot of smoked bologna. These are pork loin even. These are inexpensive cuts of meat that you're not going to break the bank on. They're not your 8-hour cooks or whatever, like if you're cooking pork butter brisket. So you want to start with something fairly easy and then graduate up. I mean, you want to get to where you're doing ribs, you're doing pork butt, and then finally when you master brisket, you've got it all figured out.
Or whole hog. I guess you couldn't do that on a drum, could you? That'd be super weird.
Yeah.
That would be pretty hard. It'd have to be an awful small hog.
So now let's move into this. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit. So I have a buddy from Mad Brad's Barbecue named Brad Berlin. He's jumping into from backyard competitions to pro competitions. Now he's looking to do some pork butt and some brisket. And he's new to that part of it. Now he does them at home, but now it's a competition situation. What advice do you have for him getting started with those two meats?
Well, one, I would say do some research, and there's a lot of great YouTube content out there on how to do some of the competition style. But you got to think competition is a one bite barbecue. Judges aren't sitting down; they're not making a plate of it. So you got to get a lot more flavor. You gotta be a little bit over the top without being too far out of the box, if that makes sense. But you got to start with a good base of flavors, and then you want to use some injections to really get some flavor deep in the meat, and then you got to bring those sauces in at the end, whatever you finish with, to meld it all together. So it kind of has that rich, sweet with the little heat and smoke element to it, and that's what's resonating with the judges. So, first you can't think about this barbecue that you think's great because you're not cooking it for you or your friends. You're cooking it for these judges. And so once you get that mentality, it makes the game a whole lot easier.
Definitely. And so are you locked into a certain sauce within region, or are you just running your own same recipe as you travel through the United States? Are you moving your flavor profiles throughout the regions?
Well, I typically do tweak it a little. I mean, I always give an example. So if we go over to Georgia and cook, everything's kind of peachy over there. They use peach wood and they bring these sweeter flavors in. So we usually add a little bit, we'll add some of those notes to it. Now we don't get way outside of what we're doing, but we just kind of use the region where we're at to flavor it a little bit. We're in Kansas City. It's usually, more saucy than where we are in Memphis. We're a little more vinegary around here. We still all have the elements of sweet with the balanced kind of spiciness to it. You don't want it to be too spicy, and you don't want it to be too smoky or anything like that. It's got to be balanced, and that's the key. You can use these little nuances to the region to kind of tweak the sweetness a little bit, but you always want to be in that general profile in the KCBS from what I've found.
Yeah, videos are a good start. In fact, we used your chicken recipe from way back when, and we took first place chicken. That's when we got hooked for our barbecue team. It was. Well,
congratulations on that. I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, it was like smoking guns hot on top and that whole dusting thing. And yeah, so we won and we're like, what? And then that was it for us. So I have a question.
All of a sudden it was easy, right? And then you got hooked thousands of dollars later.
I don't know if it was easy then, because I was just cooking ribs and chicken. Now I'm doing the whole 9 yards. So yeah, it's a little bit different. So when it comes to charcoal, I want to talk a little bit about charcoal because we had an episode on that. What is charcoal? Is there any flavor to that in your opinion? Do you have a certain charcoal you prefer and why?
Well, here, we've always burned royal oak. That's just what we had. And then being in Memphis, we had a place called the Charcoal Store, and he was a big distributor of different kinds of charcoal. So he was bringing in these restaurant grade charcoals that didn't have a lot of the extra fillers that you might get, when you go to the regular big box store and buy a bag. But the one we grew up cooking on was called Chef's Delight. And they came out with another product called Chef's Select, which is a little bit bigger briquette. And they took some of the hardwood out. So it really just makes good BTUs, perfect for low and slow smoking. And that's kind of what I've stuck with over the years. I've played around using different brands, and, I've been kind of on Team B&B for a little while, and I've, used some Kingsford for a little while. But I've always went back to that Royal Oak, and that's what I'm burning now. And
are you using that in your PK for your SEA events as well?
Yes. When I'm cooking steaks, I like to use a mixture of the lump and the briquette because I want a good hot fire, and I don't use all lump, but I like to get a base going with like a chimney, a briquette, and then scatter some fresh lump on top and let that get going so it really gets those grates up around 600 degrees where they're good and searing hot.
So let's talk about SEA a little bit then. That's a good lead in. So you've been doing a lot of those lately with your son, and it seems like he's the steak cook.
Well, he took interest in it, and me wanting him to follow my footsteps. Hopefully one day I let him run with it. And so you have to be 16 to cook these contests. And he was only 8 years old when he started. He just turned 10, and so now I have to sign up, and he kind of cooks under my name. So I get delegated back to the timekeeper, the lid guy. I get to open the lid for him. I light the fire, kind of get the coals going. But I let him, when it comes to steak selection, trimming his own meat, seasoning it the way he wants to, and cooking it, it's all him.
Yeah, I totally understand. That's exactly what went down here in Salt Lake last weekend for us. My son wanted to cook this SEA event. I signed up. He watched your video, and then I gave him all the rubs, and he went and actually competed in the pro side and ended up taking 15th out of 20. I was jacked, dude. I was like, yes, you got in there and did it.
That's awesome, yeah.
And I was like, you cooked your first event and you didn't take last, so you're a winner in my book.
That's exactly what I tell my son. He's had some pretty good luck, and but he's also, he has never finished last. So I thought, man, that's a win to be the youngest guy out there most of the time. I mean, the great thing about the SCA is you see a lot of kids getting in it now, and it's really, really taken off.
I do believe that because it's not an overnight cook. It's just a one day. Cooking out, I really enjoy those SEA events.
That's what drew me to them and all my buddies. I mean, they were more of what fun barbecue was back in the day. I mean, now barbecue's gotten so serious. You've got these $100,000 rigs and everybody's spending, $500-600 on the meat and so barbecue is really an expensive sport to play in now. But the SCA, you can sign up for $150 and you get the meat. All you really got to buy is your charcoal and your cold beer. That's about it. And it's only one day. That's what, that's another great thing about it.
Yeah. We just did that this past weekend. Well, a couple months back, we had our first one ever in Utah. And the guy who won actually used your recipe, won the whole thing. And we were going to, but I was like, no, everyone's going to use that. And of course I should have, but
that's a proven one, man. That was one for me a lot.
So what advice, let's talk about you, SCA advice. So a new steak cook, we had a lot of people come and cook this one that never done it before. They've never taken a class and they just came and cooked the steak. What would you tell them to kind of up their game a little bit? Well,
steak's one thing. The flavor of it's kind of subjective. What you really have to work on is getting that doneness right. And so you have to cook to a medium. That's the challenge in these SCA events. For me, that's taking that steak to about 128 to 130 internal in the loin, and then getting it off the pit and kind of letting it slowly rest to come on up to that medium doneness. And so once you figure out, you get your timing down, and you learn to really use that thermopen or whatever kind of handheld thermometer you have. Watch those internal temperatures. You've got the hard part out of the way. The rest of it's just getting lucky on figuring out a flavor the judges like. I think you need to really keep it kind of simple. That's why, I use the AP rub as the base. That's the salt, pepper, garlic. Those are flavors that everybody that eats meat knows. It resonates with them. And then I use a little bit of a barbecue rub that's not too sweet. I use my hot rub just to give it some color. It's really all it's for is a little peppery color kick. And, so it's really simple. I think trying to overthink it and do too much with that ribeye hurts you in the long run.
Right. And so you said you're using your handheld a lot. Do you ever use a leave-in probe while you're cooking those events at all?
We used to. I got to where we were searing them pretty fast and a little bit hotter, like say, a little bit above 600, trying to get those marks on it, and then taking them up to a raised rack and putting a probe in the center of that loin, and then watching it that way. But now I've just went back to the old standard, about 2 minutes, flip, and the same thing, and hitting it with the thermopin, and they're coming out right in about 7-8 minutes. So I kind of like that style, and it seems like I've done better one more contest when I've done it that way and not tried to rely on that probe.
Nice. So just a question with the turn in on the SCA. What are you trying to turn in first, last, middle of the pack? What are you trying to do? Because I kind of felt like if you turn in early, you're going to get judged a little harder.
I like to go in midways towards the end. So that second half of the window, I guess, if you think of it as a 30-minute window, from 15 minutes to the 30-minute mark, somewhere in there. I don't want to be dead last, but I don't want to be in the first early part, like you said. To me, it's just common nature. Somebody, when they're judging something, they're thinking, oh, this one's good, but I bet I'm going to get a different one. And you're not supposed to judge like that. They don't train them to judge like that, but it's just human nature to me. And so I've done, in my experience, I've done better being in that latter half of the turn-in window.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. I just feel like if I undercooked it might oxidize a little bit better. It might look like it's more medium than it actually is. A couple things like I feel that happens, but yeah, I've always been a back den kind of guy.
Yeah, but I also kind of feel though too, if you go in too late, you might get some judges that are blowing out on flavor as well. So I think the middle zone is money.
That's always a risk you have to take. And that's a lot of times we always cook both steaks. Some guys cook one and then they'll cook their final steak. They do like a pre-test. I cook both of mine at the same time, taste them. And that way, if I'm leaning on the salt, I can, know I need to turn in a little later, just because those guys have already got a pretty good salt taste in their palate. Or if I'm lacking, I know I want to go in closer to 15 minutes or maybe hit it with a little final sprinkle of some salt or a ground up rub just to make it pop. Just kind of feel it out and see how your steaks turned out that day. Because the crazy thing is they don't always turn out the same way.
Nope. Yeah, we did them both. And last time we did the practice run first, which worked out. But I kind of like that last minute because that's actually what happened to us is that we had a couple guys that were walking through that we know that are pro barbecue guys. They're called half big hippies. And Dave came in and I said, taste this real quick. He's all, oh, I need some salt. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Crap. And I threw some salt on the last minute. We ended up taking third, probably because of that same thing. It needed a little bit more to it. And I didn't know that until he tasted it, but it probably would have been better if I had two there, and I tasted one and went, oh, and I could just adjust the other one. Because if he wouldn't have walked by, who knows? Who knows where I would have been?
I have found that you fare a little bit better if you're on the salty side than being bland.
Yeah, especially here in Utah.
You don't want to blow them out. You don't want it so salty that it burns, but you definitely want to lean on the salty side.
Yeah, here
if you're going to turn in late. Now, if you turn in early, you might want to be on the bland side, but
because you still have taste buds at that point.
Right, you still have taste buds. That's right.
Yeah, here in Utah we have it. It's ranch dressing and salt. That's our flavor profile. So
fry sauce. You can't forget the fry sauce.
We need a fry sauce wood. Mayo chip. What do they call that now? Mayo chip.
I have no idea.
Mayo chip.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyone out of Utah doesn't know this. We invented mayo. That's ours. That's Utah's. So you guys are,
my wife loves the fry sauce.
Oh, it's the best.
It is.
We put that on everything. We put that on our Cheerios in the morning. We put that on our steak at night.
So Malcolm, I have a question. It's kind of along the steak lines, but you're an outdoorsman. Like, cooking a wild game steak, how much different is that? How do you go into that completely different? What are you doing different to get a steak ready for the grill?
Well, typically when I do, like say venison steaks or whitetail deer, what we have around here, I cut the back straps into little fillets, and I like to marinate them a little bit to get some more flavor on them. And they're super lean by nature, so they don't do well cooked over medium rare, in my opinion. So I'm like super hot, super fast, get a good char on the outside, but it's still really rare on the inside. And then, man, they'll melt in your mouth that way. That's how I love to eat them.
So are you still cooking them just like you would, like, I guess not quite SCA, but just salt, pepper, garlic, searing it real quick, and then hitting 128, pulling it and letting it rest?
Yeah, but I'm usually more like 124 on a piece of venison, 122 to 124, and it's still going to rest over to about 128, which is right in medium rare. If you go if you cook those medium, I found that venison starts to take on almost a livery like flavor. It's real, it has a real, minerally like taste when it's overcooked. But when it's rare, it's succulent. It melts in your mouth. You really taste the meat. The closer to rare to mid rare you eat it.
Nice.
So going back to the competition thing, or just cooking in your backyard, let's go there. Temperature. So there's two schools I find that people are either I go by my temperature or I go by the feel. Where do you stand on that?
A little bit of both, but really I'm a stickler for internal. I don't get caught up on the dial. If the dial's fluctuating on me, I like to keep it, pretty close to in range where I want to cook. But everything finishes according to an internal. For one, it makes your food better. You're not overcooking meat. But another one, you got to think you're not making somebody sick. If you get in the habit of knowing what internals are safe and where to take them and what the meat's supposed to look like, you don't have to worry about possibility of getting somebody sick. That's the last thing that you want to do.
So like on brisket, you're cooking are you going to cook to like 198 and then start using your thermopen and are you going for a fill at that point as well, or?
Yeah, and when I'm cooking something like brisket, it's definitely about feel. I mean, it's nuked at, when you get it to 200 degrees, you've cooked it a ton, and it's all about feel where it's soft. I mean, sometimes you can take a brisket to 198, feels like a soft stick of butter going in, it's done. Sometimes it needs to go to 205, 206. Just depends on that particular cut. I don't know. A lot of people, you'll hear them say that, that animal may have been stressed, or it may have, not been aged as much. It was fresher off the processing floor. Or, there's different ideology of why they take longer, but really it comes down to just that piece of meat when it's done. And that's where you really have to use both temperature and feel.
So what about a pork butt? Is it similar to a brisket?
I'd go by the same way. I usually put a probe in one, check it at about 192 to 195, and then start really looking for the feel. And it's done right around that 198, 200 mark. You want it a little bit more texture than a brisket, so it's not just like super soft when you probe it. You want to feel just a little bit of resistance, or it's going to be mush.
Right. So what temps are you taking your money muscles to? Are you, some people pull at 165 and just throw it in the Cambro. Some people will take it up to 202.
What I think all that where guys are saying that's where it's probed. Those 155 guys are probably not probed in the muscle. They're behind the muscle. So what I do is I put my probe right in it, right in the muscle. And then I take it to about 190 to 195, depending on how that I start feeling it at 190. And then when it's done, it's soft. That's when I cut it off and put it in the Cambro. If you're probing it back on in it, and, that butt should be between, usually they're about 175 when the remaining part of the butt, when my money muscle's done, the way I trim them. It's just, it depends on if you're doing an aggressive trim on it, really carving it out, just letting it hang on, or if you've got it held together and, it's going to take it a little bit longer because it's still a big mass. But typically that money muscle is done about an hour and a half to 2 hours before the rest of the butt when we cook them.
So going back to brisket, I know you are a huge fan of the butcher shop in Florida. and they sell those A9 briskets. So what difference are you looking at when you get an A9 as opposed to Gold Snake River Farms Wagyu brisket?
They're tit for tat with those golds. They're both really, really marbled. What I found, getting the A9s were a little more consistent in size, and that a lot of that goes into when you call Kevin and you tell him you want a competition A9, he's going through his stock and hand selecting those for comp guys. The rest of the ones he gets, he's selling in his store a little bit less per pound than what you pay for a comp one, but it's worth it to get that hand selected, brisket. And when he's hand selecting them, he's looking for uniform thickness of that flat. And, a lot of times I've gotten some of those golds, and they'll have so much fat on them and the flat be real thin on one side. And I mean, they're not all like that. They're supposed to be a little bit better selected, but I think Snake River was moving so many at a time, there was no possible way for them to select all of them. And it might happen to Kevin that way one of these days, but he prides himself in trying to pick out the best meat for comp guys. So
for right now, it's like get on top of it before that happens.
Yeah, right. Before it happens, when people first, I was doing comps back when people were cooking choice briskets, or if you had a prime, you really had something. And then the Wagyus came on the scene before anybody was cooking them. We had some beautiful briskets. I mean, they were above and beyond anything you're seeing today. But then it all caught up, and you had these other companies come on. And they started bringing in these, Australian ones like those A9s that we're cooking from Kevin, and it kind of changed the playing field. It's still around a $200 brisket, but everybody's cooking them, so it leveled out.
So just a quick question: when you got into the competition scene, how much were you paying per pound for a brisket? I'm just curious.
Oh, back in the day, you could get a brisket for $60.
Oh man!
And that's what we would go to wherever we could get one. If you could get one at Walmart or Sam's or Costco, just wherever. You didn't really, it wasn't. I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't as serious. It just nobody was cooking meat like that. You go back 10, 12 years, nobody was cooking meat like that, or at least they weren't in my area.
So when it comes to like get a selection meat, I don't, going online is cool, but like you said, with Snake River Farms, it's a great brisket, but you just don't know what you're going to get. So then that kind of goes to where do you go from there? And we go into our local butchers, but a lot of people, like I'll go into my first time I ever went in, I'm like, do you have this? And he's like, yeah, it's over there on the display. And I'm like, oh, okay. Ooh. And I was really nervous. So I was like, okay, cool. And I just went and got it. And it was like a 1 pound tri-tip. And I'm like, great. What am I supposed to do? This microwave it? And so what's your, because I know you do a lot of one-on-one talk with your butchers. What's a good way, like what someone coming into their butcher, where do you start with them? What are you looking to ask? And, who are you looking to talk to when it comes to selections of meat and getting to know your butcher?
Well, usually I just go in with the idea of asking them what they have, and if I'm looking for a tri-tip, I'll try to see what they know about tri-tip, or if they don't know about it, I might just try to strike up a conversation, tell them what it is and what I'm going to do with it and all that. It's really just like meeting a buddy is the way I try to treat them. I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to go about striking up a conversation with the butcher, but most of the time they're going to have a pretty good knowledge of meat. That's their job. So it's just, they're not, and most of them, if you take the time to talk to them, are really going to talk to you. They love talking meat. So it's pretty easy to start up a conversation.
So when you go to, I just want to know what your favorite thing to eat at home is. Like when you're sitting down, like, dude, I'm going to treat myself tonight. What are you eating? Man,
probably hot wings.
Nice.
I'm a hot wing junkie, man. I get tired of all the same old barbecue. Now good Texas brisket, that's hard to beat coming off Jolene. But give me some hot wings on a Monday night to watch football, and I'm happy.
Nice. So if you had like the opportunity to jump on a plane and go to a barbecue restaurant right now, where are you heading?
I'm probably headed back to Phoenix to go to Little Miss Barbecue. I was there last, I guess it was February, and I was blown away by how great that place was.
Nice. What kind of is it? Was it like a buffet style, sit down and order? What kind of restaurant was that?
No, it's kind of it's kind of like that Texas Aaron Franklin style where they've got the big oiler pits outside. Everybody gets there in the morning, lines up, and you go through the line and tell them, if you want a pound of brisket, lean or fat, and you want 2 or 3 ribs, some sausage, and then you get it on a tray. You can go outside or you can take it to go, whatever you want to do. But it's not fancy barbecue, but man, they do a fine job cooking it there.
Nice. Do they do the sellout style barbecue, or does they always have something going? Are they like open at 10 a.m. and they're rolling until 9 p.m.?
The one I went to is pretty much lunch only. It's a sellout. When it's gone, it's gone. And I think he did open a second location somewhere in Phoenix area that is more of a dinner spot, and I don't think that one's sellout type. Pretty sure it's like a sit down menu. I've never been there. I've only been to the walk up to the counter and order off the chalkboard kind of restaurant. Right. Those are my favorites.
I'm glad you asked that question because I'm actually heading to Phoenix in 2 weeks. So,
well, we know where you're going.
It's close to the airport, and I highly, highly recommend it.
Do you ever walk into one of those joints and everyone goes, "Oh, that's Malcom Reed. Oh my God."
A few times on occasion.
I tell you what, I'd be scared if I had a barbecue restaurant. You walked in like, oh no, here we go.
Oh man, I'm not a hard critic when it comes to barbecue. There's a ton of great barbecue out there. Now I have had some bad barbecue, but most of the time, on average, when you go into a restaurant, it's not going to be up to as good as what you can cook at home most of the time, but it's still not bad.
What did you think about those brontosaurus ribs at Traeger? Those beef ribs.
They were awesome.
Right?
I was highly impressed with everything Traeger served us when we were out there. Those guys cooked. They did a fantastic job, man. That was a class event right there, and they really know how to roll it out.
Right. When we were there, they just pretty much just fed us the entire time. They'd like, okay, we're gonna take a break, but go out on the patio. Diva Q's out there throwing out some tacos.
Those tacos were awesome too.
How do I go to that event?
Well, you got to cook on a Traeger to start.
Oh, okay. I'll get one then, because that sounds good to me. So, what advice? What do you think a lot of new cooks are making at home when they're trying to barbecue? What mistakes do you see them making the most?
I would say probably just getting caught up, worried about cooking to specific time and temps, and not learning how to use your thermometers. I mean, you got to use that stuff as a guideline, but really it comes down to knowing when that meat's done and rushing it. You get a lot of guys that they'll take a butt or a brisket up, it'll stall out, they'll give up on it, pull it off, and because they're wanting to serve it, people standing around looking at their chops, ready for some. But barbecue is something. It's like it's a work food of love. You got to put the time and the patience in there to get it to turn out right. So you don't want to try to rush it.
Yeah, and so what is like just salt and pepper? Do you think something like that trying to start out? Just let's say they want to, because I see so many people trying to go big. They want to do a brisket. They want to do a pork butt. They want to do all the big things. What's some advice you'd start someone who's just doing a brisket and that's what they're going to do? They're going to go to Costco. They're going to buy their brisket. How do they do that at home without making a huge disaster?
Man, I wouldn't be scared to go 50-50 kosher salt and coarse ground black pepper. Get a good dose on the outside. First, you got to trim it down a little bit. Knock some of that excess fat off. You don't have to get real aggressive because that fat's kind of like a safety net. But then, don't rush it. Give yourself 20 hours to cook a brisket because the longer you hold that thing, the better it's going to be. So if you put a brisket on with salt and pepper, you put it on a smoker and you start it off about 225. And you let it roll till it gets a good dark outside. I'm talking, 8-9 hours. And then you wrap it up either in foil or butcher paper, which is great. You're going to get better texture with the peach butcher paper. And then you cook it until that probe slides in like butter. It's up around 200, 202 degrees. Take it off, throw it in a dry cooler and let it rest for at least 2 hours. But I'm saying 6 hours is even better. And then take it out and slice it. It'll melt in your mouth. You can't mess it up. But you can't just cut it as soon as it comes off the pit. You're going to lose all that moisture and all that time you put into it.
Right. So KCBS event, what time's your brisket coming off?
We usually put them on around 11. they're usually coming off. We trim them down pretty aggressive for a contest. Usually coming off about 8, and they're going into Cambro, for at least 2 hours.
Are you holding your pork butts for the same, like a lot of time for the KCBS events as well? Most of our big meets are done. If they're not done by 9, something's wrong. We're behind, but we're giving them a pretty good hold. But we're going in and out of those Cambros too, because we're opening them up, burping them, or moving stuff around. We're not just letting them stand there and get hammered. We're just wanting them to calm down, chill out, let those juices go back in the meat. That way we can work it when it's time to glaze everything up and finish it. So what about ribs? Are you holding those at all, or just trying to get those to off into the cut?
Usually ribs, we try to work about a 30, 45-minute hold in them if everything's going right. And we're not, we don't worry about really putting them in a Cambro. Unless it's just really, really cold outside, we'll just kind of stack those ribs up in an aluminum pan, let them hang out the table. And then when it's time to work them, we just, pull them back out of the full, drain them, hit them with a little more rub to pretty them up, glaze them with a little of our sauce, and then 15 more minutes on a little light smoke, and they're ready to cut up and go in the box.
So do you re-sauce after you slice? After you slice your ribs, are you dunking them?
We touch it up. Usually we try to set our sauce, and and when I say set we put a little bit of wood on it, so we're getting a little bit of smoke flavor in that sauce, and it's only taking it 10 or 15 minutes to kind of tighten up, and then cutting board, cut it up. And that's when we, get them ready for the box, and we touch up the sides, any imperfections, all that stuff.
So how to barbecue right? So you started filming your recipes, and it just every single week with consistency and all that stuff. Now you have oh man,
I looked at today
700,000 followers.
710,000. No, 712,000.
Dang. So how did that all come about? Where did that all start?
Well, that's kind of, my wife was working for internet marketing company. That's kind of her background. And when she, we started our website, everybody had a MySpace page back then. Then we got into doing a newsletter. And we were working with a company that wanted us to do some videos of what it was like at these contests we were doing. They were sponsoring us, and they wanted some footage for their website. So that was about the time YouTube was getting started, and they sent us one of these little flip cams, and my wife was already wanting to record some stuff, but back then video files were so huge you couldn't do much with them. You couldn't attach them to an email because these files were so big they would never transfer. So we come up with the way to make a YouTube channel, and we could load it up to that, and then they could pull down the link and use it on their stuff. We could mark it as shareable or, for the public or private or whatever. But when we started doing that, we started making our own, and it just kind of we fell into it, basically. We were in the early stages, I guess. It was almost 10 years ago when we started doing it. And YouTube had been around, but there wasn't, it was nowhere near the size it is now.
That's awesome.
So where did the seasonings come in at that same point, or was that before all that?
That was before. I mean, we had the rub because we were doing, those Memphis and May style contests and having the judges come by. That was part of our presentation that, we wanted them to taste this rub that we made. And we got to the point where we're spending all this money on spices. I was mixing it up at home, making pounds of it at a time, had buddies and stuff. Every time I knew I was making rub, they wanted me to make them some. And so I just found I finally said, man, I got to find a way to get somebody else to make this for me. And had no intentions on selling it. I just didn't want to make it anymore. And so, I had a friend, Mark Lambert, sweet swine of mine. He had already had some of his rubs bottled, and he put me on his co-packer. And I worked with them we worked with them with the recipe, getting it tweaked where it was just like ours. And then the rest, it's kind of history. We started adding more products as they sold. I remember the first time I had to place an order for 500 pounds. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I was like, there's no way I can get rid of this stuff. And now we're ordering it, 20,000 pounds at a time.
Oh man,
that's awesome. So is there anything new in the pipeline? Cause you have your basic package that you could get online anytime. Is there anything new in the pipeline that you're trying to work with to get out on the production?
Actually, I have some that should be ready to go here any day now. But I've come up with some Malcom seasonings, and they're not specifically barbecue related. They're more seasonings that I like to cook with when I'm at home. So I've done a jerk seasoning. I've done kind of my take on a Cajun Creole seasoning, and then I've done my Mexican Southwestern style seasoning. So they're not like regular traditional barbecue rubs. They're more stuff you'd use for different kinds of cuisine.
Nice. I was actually listening to your jerk episode today.
I'm a huge fan, man. Right. When we go on vacation, we usually go somewhere in the Caribbean. I love jerk flavors.
Nice.
They're spicy though. I'm the worst when it comes to spice. I'm so bad.
They're not that bad, depending on where you get them.
Mild salsa is too spicy.
Yeah. For me. You gotta watch. Some of that jerk, they use those Scotch bonnet peppers in, and they'll light you up. I'm like you. I like spice, but I don't want the super heat. So I'm not.
You don't want to ruin your meal.
My stuff isn't over the top hot. I mean, even my hot rub, it's not too hot. It's just a little spicy.
A little bit. I would know. I eat your rubs like
spice,
snacks. I walk by the cabinet and I'll grab some killer hogs and put it in my hand and just take it. I do that literally all the time.
Hey, so
it's weird.
So are you out currently teaching classes anywhere, or are you just kind of laying low right now?
Well, I wish I was laying low. No, we're not eating nothing all the time. But I know we've got something coming up in Mississippi. I don't have anything for the rest of this year. It's almost deer hunting time. I mean, I've got like 6 more weeks until rifle season. Actually, bow season opens next weekend. So Rochelle's got me. We've sat down. We've mapped out a few videos we want to do coming up, and then we shut it down for the holidays. So
yeah, we need to get out. I need to go out there bow hunting with you, man.
Man, it's a ton of fun, man.
What I'll do is we'll head out there. We'll knock one down, cook it, and I'll head home. Bring nothing with me.
There you
go. So you guys just kind of shut it down for the rest of the season after this? Is that do you guys have anything big coming up besides that? Are you guys doing anything? You're doing the podcast is new. So how'd that come about?
Yeah, we've got. Well, I mean, we've toyed with the idea of doing a podcast for a while. I've always been a fan of them. And then we went to the National Barbecue Association's annual conference. I guess it was 2 years ago. And Greg Rempe was there. And, he hosts the Barbecue Central show. It's a huge podcast. It's been going on for years. And I did like a little presentation with him. And, man, it just kind of sparked us about, gave us the confidence that we needed just to go ahead and start, like you guys mentioned earlier. Just, if we would have waited around until we had it perfect, we probably would have never done it, but we just, jumped right in, and we're not, as long as we got one person listen to it, we're going to keep doing it. But it's growing, man. And you guys will see that people really love podcasts, and there's a lot of people that tune in and listen to them. So, we found that something fun for us to do. It's a different take on what Shell and I do in our daily lives,
Right. So are you doing your YouTube and podcasts all on the same day, or are you spreading that out? Is Monday your work day?
No, usually we film on Monday or Tuesday for the video. We always do our podcast usually Thursday or Friday morning.
Right.
I like that podcast you guys did with the fantasy football and the barbecue, because that's the only 2 podcasts I listen to. So if you guys just want to morph into that'd be kind of cool. So I could just consolidate into one.
It's funny you say that, because me and my buddy Justin that come on and do it, he used to cook with us years ago. But he's kind of, if I got a sports question, he's my go-to guy. And we're kicking around the idea of doing one that's geared more towards, sports, just for something for me and him. It's a reason for us to get together and have a whiskey drink and, shoot the breeze for an hour.
Sign me up, man. I want to do a barbecue football podcast so bad. That'd be the best. Oh, what's better than that? Right? Something else better than that.
You can't. That's hard to beat.
Well, cool, man. We're not going to keep you around any longer. We do appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you at? I mean, most people know, but there's some people out there still that don't. Where would they find you?
We're How to BBQ Right on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Howtobarbecueright.com. And you can find us on the podcast. You can pick up on iTunes or on the Google Play Store, or it's even on the website too. And we actually have an app too for Apple and Android devices, but it's being retooled. I hope to have a new update for that next week. Everybody's been asking me what's wrong with the app, when's it coming back. So hopefully we're getting close. The guys, I talked to them today, they say they're getting close. So.
Well, that's awesome, man. Again, we appreciate everything you've done. You've helped me a lot along the way. You've helped a lot of people I know along the way, and just keep going, man, because we all really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you guys too, and thanks for the invite.
All right.
Sweet. Thank you.
Hey, have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right, guys, that does it for another episode of the Pitmasters Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at the Pitmasters Podcast, or on Facebook at the Pitmasters Podcast as well. And you can also find us on anywhere you can hear podcasts.
And we are obviously on Instagram, Facebook,
Twitter.
Yeah.
All right, guys, next week we're going to have Trevor and Jared from Salt City Drum Smokers, and we're going to talk drums.
AKA Jagger Q Barbecue Team.
Yeah, Jagger Q Barbecue Team. So we're going to talk with them. They're a competition barbecue team, just GC'd up in Boise, Idaho with us. And we're going to talk drums, talk about their drums and
manufacturing drums.
Mm-hmm. And whatever comes may come. So whatever we're talking about, we're talking about. So tune in next week, guys, for that. And thanks again for listening.
Thank you.